So, ang papag-usapan po natin is ito po, itong issue na to kung saan nagkaroon ng or may lalaki pong gumawa ng video ngayon na sabi niya siya daw yung witness dun sa isang Senate hearing ni Senator Risa Hontiveros. Tapos sabi niya binayaran lang daw po siya ni Senator Risa kaya nasabi niya yung mga sinabi niya against Pastor QUIBOLOY dito sa Senate hearing ni Senator Risa Hontiveros. Okay? Pero tandaan po ninyo hindi ko po sinasabing binayaran talaga siya ni Senator Risa. Hindi ko rin po sinabing guilty si Senator Risa. I will be simply explaining today kung ano yung mga possible criminal violations or criminal liabilities po sa ganitong situation. In other words, this is simply for legal educational purposes. Okay? Today's discussion po, we will have 3 main questions. So yung pinakauna po of course para magets nyo talaga is kung ano ba talaga yung krimen na perjury. So for that po, titingnan natin kung ano ba yung nakalagay sa revised penal code. Okay? So yung batas po natin na nag-most recent amendment po sa perjury laws natin is Republic Act 11594, October 29, 2021. So in this law po basically, tinaasan yung penalty ng perjury. Okay? So explain ko lang din po pala muna itong amendatory law na to kasi baka maguluhan po kayo. So yung crime po of perjury, of course, mahanap po natin yan sa revised penal code. However, kung kailangan po i-amend yung provisions ng revised penal code, kailangan po ngayon mag-create or magkaroon ng amendatory law. So in this case po, for the crime of perjury, yun po yung Republic Act 11594. Okay, ina-explain ko lang po to kasi baka magtaka kayo bakit ito yung sinasite ko, hindi revised penal code. So in summary po, yung pinaka-point ng batas nito, yung section 1 nito ngayon, kung makita nyo, gusto palitan nitong 11594 na itong sinulat nila dito, ito pong hinighlight ko, ito na yung ilipat or isulat na ngayon sa revised penal code because of this amendatory law. Okay, so in other words, Article 183 of the revised penal code will be amended according to this. So yung pinaka-important po nating iti-take note dito is yung penalties. Okay, pero bago ko po pala explain yung penalties, explain ko muna sa inyo kung ano ba talaga yung crimen of perjury. So Article 183 po yan of the revised penal code, false testimony in other cases and perjury in solemn affirmation. So hindi ko na po ito babasahin verbatim tong paragraph. I will just summarize it and feel free to read it na lang po kung gusto ninyo. In summary po, the crime of perjury is making false statements po or pagsisinungaling po ninyo while you are under oath habang nanumpa po kayo. Okay? So dito po kasi sa discussion natin, yung mga allegations dito, isabi nung witness, binayaran daw siya ni Senator Risa kaya nagsinungaling daw siya dun sa Senate hearing niya. Diba tatandaan po natin in a Senate hearing, diba yung mga witnesses po doon, yung mga resource persons, pinapa-take oath po sila eh. Therefore, pwede po yun pumasok ngayon for the crime of perjury kung totoong nagsinungaling talaga yung witness na yun. Okay? So that's the easiest way for me to explain the crime of perjury, ang pagsisinungaling po while you are under oath. Okay? So ganyan po yan. So dapat po maging honest talaga kayo. Kung nanumpa kayo, dapat wala kayong any false statements kasi you can be held liable for this crime. Tapos later po, explain ko sa inyo yung penalty. Ito, tingnan nyo, prison major in its minimum period. So medyo mabigat po yan. Pero anyway, mamaya na po natin explain yung possible penalties and potential liabilities po sa krimen na perjury. And then yung next question naman po natin for question number 2, pwede ba maging liable si Senator Risa hindi naman siya ang gumawa ng perjurious statement? Okay, so that is a very interesting question kasi kung tatandaan po ninyo, yung gumawa naman or nagsabi ng perjurious statement is yung witness, siya yung nagsinungaling eh. So saan dun yung perjury sa side ni Senator Risa? Okay, so for that po ngayon, dito papasok yung binanggit dati ni FPRRD, yung subornation of perjury. Kung naalala po ba ninyo yung dati yung sa issue kay Colonel Grijaldo po ata yun, if I'm not mistaken, na sabi ni Colonel Grijaldo, pinilit daw siya ng mga congressman sa House of Representatives. So sabi ni FPRRD dun sa interview, that can be considered as subornation of perjury. Pero anyway, tuloy na po tayo sa discussion para hindi po tayo medyo humaba. Okay, so ngayon explain ko po sa inyo kung ano ba yung potential liability ng isang tao na nag-induce ng another person to commit the crime of perjury. Okay, so yung binanggit po ni FPRRD na subornation of perjury, dati po kasi meron tayong specific or special law for that na talagang nagse-specify or naglalagay doon ng term na subornation of perjury. However, dito po sa batas natin, sa current setup po ng criminal laws natin, wala na pong term na subornation of perjury. Kung pumunta po kayo doon sa Article 183, ito pong binanggit ko sa inyo kanina, 183, 184, so on and so forth regarding the provisions po regarding perjury sa atin. So current setup po natin, wala na pong term doon na subornation of perjury. However, sa setup po natin, meron naman pong tinatawag na principal by inducement. Ito ito po, number 2, those who directly force or induce others to commit it. Okay? So una-una po explain ko muna sa inyo ano ba talaga yung principal. Okay? So kung makikita po ninyo sa Article 16 of the Revised Penal Code, nakalagay po dito, who are criminally liable. The following are criminally liable for grave and less grave felonies. Number 1, principal. Okay? So yan na lang po explain ko. Hindi ko na ita-touch on yung accomplice and accessories kasi wala naman pong kinalaman na yan. Pero yung isa pa pong kailangan natin isagutin muna before we proceed is ito po kasi nakalagay lang dito, criminally liable for grave and less grave felonies. So saan ba dyan babagsak yung crime of perjury? So yung grave felonies po, ito yung may mga capital penalty. Ito po yung life imprisonment, reclusion perpetua, reclusion temporal. Yung pinakita ko kanina, prison mayor, di ba? Paano papasok doon yung perjury? So dito po yan papasok yung perjury sa less grave felonies. So less grave felonies po, ito yung may mga correctional penalties pataas. So yung prison mayor po, basically it is in between the capital penalty and the correctional penalties po natin. Therefore, papasok po siya sa less grave felonies. Okay? So kung pasok po siya sa less grave felonies, papasok po to lahat ng mga terms na to ngayon. Pero anyway, yung important lang po sa atin is the term principal. So under Article 17 po, principals, the following are considered principals. There are multiple ways po kasi para maging principal kayo. Yung isa po dyan is those who directly force or induce others to commit it. Meaning, in-induce mo po or pinilit mo yung ibang tao na gumawa ng krimen. Okay? So, ito pong those who directly force or induce others to commit it. Ito rin po yung ginagamit nilang argument against FPRRD. Dun po sa yung sa drug war niya because daw of the reward system, yung quote-unquote reward system, although those are all allegations pa lang po, hindi pa naman established facts talaga, na dahil daw dun sa quote-unquote reward system, naging principal by inducement daw si FPRRD because yun nga, na-induce na yung mga police officers, yung mga vigilante groups to perform all those EJKs because of that reward system. Ina-explain ko lang din po yung side ni FPRRD para po mas ma-gets nyo talaga yung concept behind this, okay? So ngayon, ang sabi po dun ng witness sa video niya is pinilit daw siya or binayaran daw po siya ni Senator Risa Hontiveros. So that will fall under this one po, yung inducing others to commit it. So in other words po, yung ginawa ni Senator Risa Hontiveros is pwede po yun siya bumagsak dito under Article 17 paragraph 2 as a principal by inducement in inducing that witness po in committing a perjurious or making a perjurious statement dun sa Senate hearing. Okay? So yun po yun. And again, kaya ina-explain ko po sa inyo tong term na principal kasi wala na po yung term nga na subornation of perjury dito sa RPC natin, sa Revised Penal Code. However, meron naman po tayong provisions regarding this, yung principal by inducement. So kung makikita po nyo, pwede pa rin po kayo maging liable ng krimen assuming yung krimen na yon is a grave or less grave felony if you induced or forced another person to commit a crime. Hindi lang po yung direct participant or yung taong mismo gumawa ng krimen ang pwede maging liable. Pati po kayo kung pilitin ninyo or inducin yung isang tao na gumawa ng krimen, you will be considered as a principal by inducement. Okay? And for our last question po, ano ang penalty ng ganitong kitmen? Okay, so i-correct po muna natin yan. Ano ang penalty? So balik po tayo dito sa RA 11594, yung amendatory law po sa perjury. So makita po niyo nakalagay dito, the penalty of prison mayor in its minimum period shall be imposed upon any person who knowingly making untruthful statements and so on and so forth. Hindi ko na po babasahin. So prison mayor po basically, it is 6 years and 1 day po yung minimum penalty niyan. Okay? And ito pong prison mayor or yung 6 years and 1 day is important also to note considering si Senator Risa Hontiveros po kasi is a sitting senator, di ba? Therefore, she has what we call parliamentary immunity under the Constitution. So yung parliamentary immunity po under the Constitution, it is only limited up to 6 years. So hindi po pwede arestuhin ang member ng Congress or member ng Senate for a crime that has a penalty of up to 6 years. Okay? However, dito po, since prison mayor na yung penalty ngayon ng perjury because of this amendatory law, ang 6 years and 1 day po, hindi na covered or hindi na protected nung tinatawag na parliamentary immunity. So ang point ko lang po dito, let's say mag full-blown criminal case talaga sila tapos let's say mahatulan ng guilty. Hindi ko po sinasabing guilty this is just for discussion purposes. So kung mahatulan po ng guilty dito, pwede po siyang maaresto kasi hindi po covered ng parliamentary immunity yung prison mayor na penalty. Okay? At yung isa pa pong kailangan natin i-take note din dito is this one po. So aside from imprisonment, meron din po yung fine also. So this one shall also suffer a fine not to exceed 1 million pesos So yung 1 million pesos, I'm assuming hindi naman na yan ganun kabigat talaga, di ba, for mga people of influence. Okay, so ang next po natin kailangan i-take note is ito, and perpetual absolute disqualification from holding any appointive or elective position in the government or any agency, entity, or instrumentality thereof. Okay, so ito yung medyo big deal dito since yung party involved po dito sa discussion natin is an elected officer, di ba, specifically a member of the Senate, a senator. So kung maging guilty po siya, mahatulan po siya ng guilty verdict, pwede po yan siya ngayon mahatulan ng perpetual absolute disqualification from holding any appointive or elective position in the government. Okay, so yan po yung mga liability in the crime of perjury. Okay, and klaruhin ko lang din po, baka magtaka kayo, hindi ba itong provision na to will apply only to the person who directly performed the perjurious statement? Okay, so hindi po yun siya limited dun sa author lang ng crime. This will also apply po to the person who induced another to commit. In other words po, yung principal by inducement will have this penalty also. So anyway, hanggang dyan lang po yung discussion natin for today. If you like more legal educational videos po, may lalabas po yan dito sa gilid ng mukha ko. So panoorin nyo na lang po yung i-recommend sa inyo ni YouTube, and if you like more videos like this po, follow lang po kayo or subscribe po kayo sa akin. Until next time, see you all po. Bye-bye!